Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today I'm going to provide with you 5 fast rules that I obey every time out on the water. These are rules I've developed over time that I know if I follow, I will have a more productive time out on the water and enjoy myself a lot more, regardless of whether I'm fishing a high dollar professional level tournament or maybe I've got the kids out in the John boat. In either case, I always make sure to follow these 5 rules because I know I'll be a much more successful angler if I do. Today's video is brought to you by the Deep Dive app, which will help you select the best fishing places in the lake with features like the lake level, the current flow, the top baits tool, which will help you select the best baits for certain locations throughout the lake. Whether that's a clear water, stained water, dirty water, it'll choose the best bait for that location, provide you with all the information like what structure, what retrieve, different reel, all of the information that you need to catch the fish. This is in the app. The cool part about this app, though, is it's not just based on areas. It does provide you with specific tournament winning data that has been collected to help you figure out your best choices for baits and locations for whatever region of the lake it is that you want to fish. On top of that, not only does the app provide you with best locations, it gives you water clarity as well. So maybe you're on a lake like Lake Eufaula where there is a bunch of different water clarity located throughout the entire lake. This will help you identify the clearest portions as well as the dirtiest portions of the lake. Plus, the Deep Dive app has now added the wind effect map, which is going to take all of the different wind conditions for the past couple of days and show you what banks on the lake are being hit the hardest. They also have inflow points that show you different places throughout the lake where your water is being flushed into the lake through different ditches and creeks and rivers, providing you with high percentage places to fish and letting you know what parts of the lake are going to be the best areas after a rain. Check out the Deep Dive app to help you become a better angler. So the first rule is one that I learned from Kevin Van Dam years ago. I remember reading an article or watching a video where he talked about the 15-minute rule. And that was where he would spend 15 minutes in an area. And if it was unproductive or he didn't feel like it was going to be productive, he picked up and went to a different location. So he'd spend 15 minutes in an area and decide whether or not he should stay or go. I generally try to follow that regardless of whether I'm fun fishing or I'm out fishing practice or in a tournament. The idea being that if there is an active fish in that area, they're going to let you know pretty quick. And if you're in an area that feels good and you're been there for 15 minutes without a bite, maybe you give it another 15 minutes. But generally, you're just kind of watching the clock to determine whether or not you should just leave the area. And if you're giving yourself a 15 minutes or 30 minutes, you're going to be able to cover a lot more water and eventually probably put yourself in a much more productive area. So I like to follow what I call the 15-minute rule. And again, that's something that I learned years ago from watching Kevin Van Dam, one of the best tournament anglers of all time. So I highly recommend just continuously looking for new water until you find something that really satisfies what you're looking for. Too many anglers will go out, pick an area, and they stay there all day. If you can cover water, you should probably try covering some water. So that's rule number one. Rule number two is one I talk about on the channel quite a bit, and that just has to do with barometric pressure. If I am in a high pressure situation, so you've got your front went through, you've got bluebird sky days, and it's a high pressure situation, I'm probably going to be fishing a bottom bait or fishing the heaviest cover I can find. Generally speaking, especially during your cooler water period times, high pressure days are not going to lead to good fishing. And from what I've found is that the fish are going to be glued to the bottom or tight to thick cover. So that's what I'm going to fish. If we've got low pressure days, a lot of times that's where you can pick up your moving baits and cover a lot of water with baits that are higher up in the water column. And from that standpoint, I know what the weather's like when I go out, and I'm going to choose the way I start my day based on whether it's a high pressure or low pressure day. You can always make adjustments throughout the day, but I highly recommend, based on my experience, that if it's a high pressure day, fish the bottom, fish heavy cover. And if it's low pressure day, you can probably throw whatever you want at that point. But you want to pay attention to that. So that's rule number two. Rule number three has to do with the area you're fishing. I am always paying attention to my surroundings and whether or not there is any other life in that area. What I mean by that is, am I seeing bluegill? Am I seeing shad? Am I seeing bait fish? Am I seeing frogs, crayfish, anything that lets me know there is life in this area? That's for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, it's forage for bass. So if you see crayfish, if you see bluegill, if you see minnows, bass are probably nearby that are feeding on it. But a lot of times it's even just life like birds or frogs, other things that, yeah, they could be foraged for bass, but really they're there for the same reason. They're there feeding on those minnows or feeding on bugs and insects. And what I've found over the years is if you're in an area where you're not seeing any life forms, you generally don't catch that many bass. If you're in an area that has a lot of stuff going on, you hear bluegills popping under pads, you see birds on the shoreline, uh, those are generally areas that produce more bass, or at least I find it's easier to catch fish in those areas. So I'm always paying attention to my surroundings. That's rule three. Rule four is what I call current is king. Current is so valuable in terms of positioning fish of most species, but if you're targeting bass, current is one of the biggest factors in how those fish set up. I'm not necessarily just talking about current that is natural current coming down a river or coming through a lake. I'm talking about wind-driven current every bit as much as I am natural current. If you're fishing brush piles, the fish are going to be set up based on the current flow, whether that's wind blowing current past the point with a brush pile or whether that's actual river flow coming past that point. The point here is bass will be set up based on current. Generally speaking, the more current, the better, at least in the warmer periods. In cooler periods, the fish might actually try to move away from it. But again, it's crucial for you to recognize where the current is for those reasons. Generally speaking, you can use it to your advantage. You just have to be able to recognize where the current flow is. That could be current, just, like wind blowing current along a floating dock that has a solid break wall along the front of it. Anything. You just want to recognize how the current is setting up fish. Because if you can recognize where that current is, you'll be able to recognize how the fish are going to utilize it to their advantage. It's basically like us going to a restaurant. If you sit at a table, you're going to get served. If you sit in the parking lot, the chance of the food coming by, not as good. So you're better off sitting at the table. Well, that's where the fish are going to be sitting. The current is the table at that point. So I always try to look for current. And then the fifth thing, and this sounds like it's ridiculous, but it really comes down to having fun on the water. It really disturbs me every time I see people getting into an argument over fishing on the water. I don't care if it's a professional level event. I'm going to be out there and I'm fishing more thoroughly. I'm fishing better if I'm comfortable, if I'm having fun, enjoying the day. It's really important for me as an angler to go out and try to relieve that stress. I let go of that stress, recognize I'm having fun on the water, and I generally fish much better. But if you're looking, whether you're in a tournament or you're out fun fishing, if you're having fun, you're enjoying the day, you're probably being more productive. And even if you're not catching fish, you're going to want to do it again because you had fun. So recognize the fact that fishing is supposed to be fun. If you're not having fun, I don't know why you're doing it, to be honest. And if you're having fun, you're going to want to continue to come back and do it. So those are the 5 rules I always try to follow. I am always, every time I got the boys out, I'm giving them these rules because I really feel like they are the groundwork to successful fishing. So let me know in the comment section, do you have other rules that you try to follow every time out on the water that make you a better angler? If so, share it with us. We'd love to see it as well. All right, guys, if you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned, new video coming out tomorrow.